Hey there. Hello, how do you do? My name is Harry Wetzel. Thanks for coming. It's the 80s, darling. Yes, it is. It's March the 1st, 1983. It's a beautiful spring day in New York City. And I'm ducking out of the booze store to go down the street to get a cup of coffee. Every now and then, if the sales floor isn't crowded with customers and the wine stewards are just standing around, you can just dash out right down the corner, get a cup of coffee. Sometimes you say, anybody want any? And they're like, yeah. And sometimes they're like, no. Today they're like, no. So I'm walking down the street, and anytime you're outside of the booze store during business hours, it's sort of wondrous. And on a beautiful day like today, it's a New York March, but it seems like a Michigan April. Yes. It's in the upper 40s. It's a glorious day. And I'm walking down the street, and I see a familiar face from back home. Yes. Sort of. All right. Detroiters, do you remember Kelly Harmon? Yes. Kelly Harmon was that beautiful woman who was in the WRIF radio commercial. What do you think of WRIF? And she would say, and she would open her mouth and start to lip sync soundbite after soundbite after soundbite from rock and roll song after rock and roll song, a very complicated series of lip syncing to do, and she does it perfectly. And the camera slowly zooms in on her mouth as she says all these things, and then the camera pulls back and she finishes her little spiel with all the lip syncing. And the voiceover narration says, wow, you have a very unusual mouth. And she says, WRIF is a very unusual radio station. And she says, baby! Dubbed, of course, right. So, Detroiters, do you remember that commercial? If so, share to somebody else who might know, and remember that, and like and subscribe, and thank you. All right. So she's walking up the street, and I'm walking down the street, and I want to make some sort of contact without pestering the celebrity. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I go, aha, I know just what to do. And just as we're approaching each other, I say, baby! And she turns to me, and she laughs a little bit. She does. She has a great big smile, and she laughs. And we meet eyes, and she turns her head and keeps on going. And I'm like, that's a win. I made her laugh. She looked at me and smiled, and we both went on our way. No muss, no fuss. That was a win. So I'm in a fantastic mood. I just had a celebrity sighting, and I'm going into the coffee shop to get a cup of coffee. And as I open the door, a beautiful young woman is on her way out. Very beautiful. Strawberry blonde hair and hazel green eyes. I saw him right away. She's so pretty. And as I'm holding the door and she's walking out, we meet eyes, and I say, pretty. And she gives me a great big smile. And she does. And we meet eyes, and she turns her head and goes on her way. Yes. I'll likely never see her again. I go in and I order my coffee, and even though I'll likely never see her again, I'm smitten with a woman who's already gone. Yes. It's all right. Another crush will be along presently. Just you wait. Just you wait. So, I go back to work. Another regular day at the booze store. All right, I take my lunch at 2:30. I take it as late as I can, so that when I come back, there's not as long a second half of the day. Right. But back during the holiday crunch, our wine steward wrangler, the beautiful Sandra from the office upstairs, she got us all together, and she said, all right, could you please, I know you're allowed 1 hour for lunch, but would you please punch out only for a half an hour and come back, because we need people on the floor at all times. It's so busy. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. We're allowed an hour. I want my hour. I want to go to Central Park. So later on, I go up to Sandra and I say, you said we're allowed an hour, but will I get in trouble if I punch out for an hour? And she said, no, you can do that. And I said, well, then that's what I'm doing. I wanted to go to Central Park every time. So if you got a half-hour lunch break in Manhattan, you're going to walk over to the deli. You'll order your sandwich or whatever. It'll take 15, 20 minutes. And then you've got 10 or 12 minutes to wolf it down and get back to work. Forget it. So what I do, at 2:30, I take off. I walk over to Central Park. I go to the local vendor there. He's got his little cart. He's got his hot dogs and his knishes and his little treats and everything. So I get a potato knish. Yes. And it seems like the least volatile of all his offerings. It's deep fried knish. It's horrible, and it's fabulous at the same time. Yes, as only street vendor New York street food can be, horrible and wonderful at the same time. So I go over to the park, and I'm in Central Park. There's a lovely pond. It's either a very little lake or a very big pond. And it's Mavis Pond. And there's a great big rock, Mavis Rock. There's this giant rock. And so I climb up on the rock with my Knish. Yes. And I enjoy my luncheon in nature. You're sitting on this rock on the edge of a pond. And there are birds. And there's trees wherever you look. And you look in every direction, because where I'm seated right now in the park, you can't see any buildings from where you are. All the trees are in the way. So you're completely surrounded by nature. In the middle of one of the biggest cities in the world, you're in the middle of perfect, beautiful greenery. It's like medicine. And so I would sit and enjoy my lunch, and I'd have my little Knish, and I'd sit there on the rock. And this day I'm thinking about Miss Pretty that I saw at the coffee shop, and how beautiful she was, and how she's just one very pretty needle in a huge haystack called New York City. We'll never see her again, likely. It's fine. But she's so pretty. I just kept on thinking about her hazel green eyes and her strawberry blonde hair. So I finish up. I got to get back to work. I'm walking down 61st, and I'm rounding Madison Avenue, ready to cut over to the booze store. And who do you think I run into but Miss Pretty herself? Miss Pretty herself, and I'm like, I was just thinking about you. I was thinking about how beautiful you were and how I'd love to go to dinner. Would you like to go to dinner sometime? And she's like, she's obviously taken aback, and I say, excuse me, hello, how do you do? My name is Harry. And I shake her hand, and we give each other a two-handed shake. And she says, I'm Kathy. And I'm like, it's a pleasure to meet you. She said, yes, I'll go to dinner with you. And I'm like, this is fantastic. Can I get your number? She says, yes. So I take out my book from my breast pocket. I've always got my address book, and I've got my pencil, and she just takes it and writes her full name, Kathleen Marie, and her last name and her number in perfectly dainty handwriting. And I'm like, all right. So I put that back in my pocket, and I'm like, when can I call you? She said, call me tonight. I get home at 7. I said, I get home after that. I'll call you probably around 8. She says, that's perfect. I said, Kathy, it's an honor, it's a pleasure, it's a delight to meet you, and I'll talk to you later on tonight. She says, okay, I'll talk to you tonight. And I walk across the street, barely touching the cement. I'm floating a little bit. You know, anytime anything like this happens, you think this is the time of unlimited potential. This could turn into anything. This could actually work out. Maybe. So I get home that night, and I give her a call, It's a little bit after 8. And we arranged to have a date tomorrow night at a place that she likes, a fondue place right over here on 52nd Street called La Fondue. And I've seen that place. I've passed. She said, "Oh, I love that place." And I said, "I've passed it many a time. I'd love to go there." So, it's the next night. And we meet right there in front of La Fondue on 52nd Street at about 8 o'clock. And we go in and we have a lovely dinner. She's brilliant. She's beautiful. She's got a degree from Vassar. She's brilliant. How did I wind up with her? You say, it's all right, it's all right. Just go along with it. Maybe it'll all work out. Maybe. So, we had our first date. When the date was over at La Fondue, all that cheese, oh, it was a delicious meal. And we walk down 52nd, we walk over. She lives on 49th Street. So we walked over to her apartment, and she says, "I've got to go." And I'm like, "All right." I said, "May I kiss you?" And she said, "Yes." And so we had a nice hug and a smooch. And I said, "We'll be in touch, and I'll call you tomorrow." She said, "Please do. I'm looking forward to seeing you again." So that was my first real date that actually worked out in New York, and I got a smooch and everything. I'll tell you more about what happened later on next time. I look so forward to seeing you again.